amazing videos talking about this house arrest and about other things. Remember to like, subscribe, turn on post notifications, and share this video for family and friends. Hope you have a good time watching my dad's videos. Bye!
So we finally have come together, all three of us. You know, we've been kind of on a similar journey. Me and Stan have been in America talking about Greg Howlett, King James III, and you've been doing your thing there in Spain, and you've got your crew in the UK as well. You and Mahoney linked up, and Lee Dawson and everybody else, Lee Hemington, and everybody's gotten involved with the film crew with doing a documentary, which came out yesterday, and here we are. So.
And just quickly, part 2 is coming out on Independence Day.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, so it'll be coming out, that'll be next weekend then.
On the 4th,
Would that be Coffee with the King?
I don't know what they'll name it, because on purpose I've not got involved so that I can keep an open mind. There's nothing worse than a closed mind. So I've kept my mind completely open and let them just do their job.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Your mind is like a parachute. It's absolutely useless if it's closed.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
That is such wisdom, sir.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Such wisdom. So, I mean, I know that we talked about a week ago, and when we first got a chance to kind of get an introduction to each other, and you're kind of coming at this from the same angle that we are, just ultimately in search of truth. And you know, I know that we're trying to be as unbiased as possible and try to discover the truth in the process. So, I mean, how are you feeling about everything now that we are this far into the game and we've learned what we've learned so far?
I've never felt so peaceful in my entire life. I grew up in a Christian cult. And so I was brainwashed or indoctrinated, for the want of a better word, because it's quite funny. I went through the court system where I was defending certain people many years ago, and I referred to being brainwashed by it. And they said, "Oh, no. Christians aren't brainwashed. They're indoctrinated. It's Muslims who are brainwashed." And that just shows you how stupid it is. So yeah, it's been a fabulous journey, and I feel totally happy. And I feel even happier the more we're going into it, because I was told that this was going to happen. I knew something was wrong after September the 11th. You just knew something was wrong.
Yeah.
But it was a bit like the O.J. Simpson case. You knew he was guilty, but you knew he'd get away with it. That's all you needed to know, because the system was corrupt. And it doesn't matter if you've got innocent people, they'll be found guilty when they're innocent because the system is wrong.
Yeah, it's very tragic how our justice system has turned out. And I definitely agree with you. I mean, I'm a little bit older. I'm 45. Stan's a little bit older than me, but I definitely remember when 9/11 took place. And something has definitely felt off as far as the energy of the planet, the people. You know, I think it's time for that evolution per se, and I kind of feel like we're right there on the cusp of that moment in history, which is really fascinating.
We are certainly on the cusp of it. I was told about this before, and then in December last year I was told by somebody who of a very high standing in the American establishment that is part of the alliance. Now, most people in America are completely oblivious to the fact as to who the alliance actually are. And it's not just American. You're talking of 4 countries in the alliance. Mm-hmm. The Americans are working extremely closely with the Russians, with Vladimir Putin. But I think any lad knew immediately those two got together. They were 2 naughty boys that would get on like a house on fire. That was blatantly obvious. Then Chairman Xi, obviously Jinping over in China, he's working very closely with Donald Trump and Modi in India. They're working together. Now, when he points the finger at China, he's talking about the Communist Party, not about the man himself. The man himself is with Trump, the ones around him. You know, Trump takes the naughty boys from America and puts them in Gitmo. In China, You're not as lucky. You're going to get shot. They'll probably
I
get
know.
shot in Gitmo anyway, but never mind.
I'm just curious, Charlie, with a little bit of your intel too. I've been hearing a lot of reports about the Communist Party being disbanded.
There has been.
But you're not. I can't find it in like any sort of like media resource. I like researching the internet, because it even like stuff I'll see in the news, like current news, talks about the Communist Party doing something to a journalist or something, which makes it still sound like they're in power.
You've just found it in the social media news, which is the truth news, which is you and me.
Right.
Not the bullshit mainstream media news, which is completely controlled. You won't find the truth in a swamp. You'll find it talking to Stan and me.
Right.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's like Charlie's saying, it's like they're going to continue these false stories. It's just like the majority of what we hear out there isn't really happening. Like a lot of this stuff in Africa that you see they're showing is all been proven to be fake. Like they give all this separation of everything and act like all these people hate the United States. They hate the Americans. We're against this, us against them. It's all BS. Like all these narratives are so fake and been happening for so long since the inception of the television, that's where they've indoctrinated the minds of the masses. And those that have, like yourself, Bryce, has stepped out and said, you know what? I don't even have TV anymore. You know what I mean? You don't watch it. You don't have cable. You're going to alternative. And then the ones that are still mind controlled are still watching the television, saying that if you watch YouTube and you watch social media, then you're the idiot. So you're seeing the disconnect because we are the news. We're the ones sharing it. Like Charlie, could you share with us in the audience kind of, because there's something that you had, I know you mentioned this before, but for our audiences, how you have these connections, what you do for a living and why you have these connections and how you have this inside intel.
Yeah, I was in the hotel business for many, many years and retired 15 years ago. But in the hotel business, we used to change people's money because they go on holiday, they change the currency. So I dealt in currency for years. But we had going back 30 years ago, somebody walked into my office and said, I need some money in England this afternoon. And I said, well, if you give me the Singapore dollars in Singapore, plus 10%, then we'll give it to you this afternoon in England. So but the basics of where it started. And then suddenly it became more and more. People say, well, I could do with this money here, I could do with this money there. And we were very, very efficient at it. And then it was a very organic. It just sort of grew and grew. And people would come, funnily enough, it was like in Spain where I am, in the old days when we had the peseta here and the pound in Gibraltar, we'd get paid in pounds because we work for a British company. So we'd go down to the Bank of Credit and Commerce and we'd do a little deal on the side and make a few quid and change everybody's checks for cash. And that's how it started. And then you get to meet people with the holiday business that come and stay with you. And because you're in charge, you become friends with the more famous ones, let's say, or politicians, diplomats, whatever. Because you look after them a little bit different, give them a bit more protection, you become their friends. And then they start talking about stuff, and you just in conversation, really, you talk about you're doing this and this. They go, do you know what, Charlie? We've actually got some money in the embassy that we need moving, and we didn't know how to go about it. And they're worried because of the way that the world looks at cash nowadays. They look at it as like an evil. If the truth was known out there, the CIA have been moving more cash than I've ever seen. I mean, and they're the most corrupt organization. And it's not just cash, it's heroin, it's hashish, it's cocaine, it's the lot. They've been doing it. I did an interview 2 nights ago with a guy that absolutely confirmed everything. He was a pilot for the CIA when he was younger. And he's only just been able to talk about it because he was under the Official Secrets Act for 20 years. And he's had 20 years from the date of the end of the agreement being ended where he's been able to talk because the rest of the mob behind the scenes, the Obamas, the Clintons, the Bushes, were doing exactly the same. Whereas Trump, with his big broom and his Twitter account, has been brushing them out and draining the swamp and cleaning them out. So he talked, and we're waiting at the moment for the right time to release that interview, but that was something else. That was something else.
I definitely look forward to that one.
How recent was that interview?
Sorry?
How recent was that interview?
2 days ago.
2 days ago. Okay.
But it hasn't been released yet. Yeah.
Hasn't been released at all.
Okay.
I'm waiting for him to tell me when the right time is. There's certain things we discussed that we have a non-disclosure agreement that I've just signed. And we just have to make very, very sure. And this is one of the things that I love about Trump. This guy was in the CIA for a number of years. He left because of his conscience, because he knew what they were doing. When he found out he knew what they were shifting, he left. But he was still many years under the Secrecy Act, the gagging order. What do you think Trump did when he got into power? He went for everybody who left the CIA to find out why. And of course, he found a minefield. He must have thought it was his birthday.
Yeah, because it's an absolutely corrupt organization.
He's got first-hand information of people who left because of a clear conscience. They were unaware what they were doing, and they couldn't do it because they were responsible. They would have blood on their hands, and that's exactly what he said.
Well, that's definitely something I would like to check out once it's able to be released. Something else that you had mentioned in the conversation that we talked about, and it goes back to your connections and your intel. We had another thing that brings us together in addition to Greg Howlett would be Q, the topics of Nacera, Jacera, the global economic reset. We've heard talks about a rainbow dollar being backed by multiple different precious metals. But you said something to me that I hadn't heard before, and I'm very familiar with like silver certificates and things like that, which are treasury notes. And you had mentioned the U.S. note, the USN. Can you kind of elaborate a little bit on that? Because and that's another thing too, is that we had talked about we are in this end game for the QAnon movement. So we should be expecting within the next 6 months max. I'm thinking we're going to see some big changes all around the world, hopefully.
I think within the next 9 days or 10 days, we get 6 months.
So you thinking July 4th?
I think before July the 9th.
Okay. Okay.
And I don't think there's anybody knows what date it is. But
right.
I have certain intel that certain things are happening between the 2nd and the 9th. And it may be another smokescreen because they want to see who sticks their head up, because the deep state they've realized they've lost control and they're not happy. And all this Black Lives Matter stuff and all that stuff is a distraction. And that in the end, they'll just go, forget the black fellas, we're going to go straight for Trump. We need to get rid of him because he's taking everything away from us, taking our power, our new world order, our control, everything's dissipating.
Yeah.
But no, the US note is already in operation, but you don't know about it yet because it's not public knowledge. But what it is it's backed by gold, precious metals, diamonds, currency even. It's extremely well backed. Interestingly enough, people go, there's not enough gold in the world. And there's not. Yes, there is.
I've heard stories about the possibility of a huge supply of ancient gold in the United States in the Grand Canyon. And there's somebody who I respect his work, and he's done a lot of research in regards to this. He researches the Federal Reserve. It's a guy named Bix Weir with a channel called Road to Ruta. And there's been other people that have tried to confirm this Grand Canyon gold, but I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that makes sense to me. But there's also a terrific. If you go back to the story I told you earlier about the guy that was transporting heroin and hashish from the Far East into America, you don't get it for free. The cash and gold was going the other way. That's why your Fort Knox is empty. Now I know, and when I say I know, I have seen with my own eyes 178 underground storage warehouses full of vintage gold and cash in the Far East. Just let that sink in. 178 underground storage facilities, not one. We're talking into the multi-trillions in value.
That's insane.
And none of that gold is recorded because it paid for heroin and hashish. And that cash came out of the Federal Reserve. So it's not been registered. But
Very
it's all
interesting.
sat in Vietnam, Cambodia, Philippines, underground.
Now, with this U.S. note, is it going to, will there be, and will these other, as far as you know, all these other different countries, when they launch their new monetary system, is it going to include paper, or is it all going to be a digital system?
No, it won't be all digital. It will be, they'll try and push digital a lot more to the quantum financial system, which is the basic model of it. There will be currency still out there in physical currency. The Americans won't know that the new note is backed by gold until the transition is over a year or so down the line. They'll just suddenly notice you've got a brand new $100 bill. You've got a brand new 20 or 50 or 10 or 5, whatever. That's all you'll notice is you've got new bills coming out. So as they don't spook the world. And that'll be the same with the euro, be the same with the pound. It'll be the same with most currencies.
So what would happen with the U.S. dollar and the Federal Reserve and the IRS? Will all those things come to a close? And
the IRS and the Federal Reserve will cease to exist when this transition is over.
that would be glorious here in the United States.
Yeah, that's what we're seeing and hearing for sure.
But this is the swamp.
Yes.
This is the foundations of your swamp.
Oh, it's a nasty swamp. I'm not proud. I'm not proud of the stuff that the politicians and people in power of the United States have been doing over the past 100 and something years, 200 years. It's been.
England was no better.
No, I know.
China was no better. But destroying history is stupidity. Because if you don't know where you've come from, you'll never know where you're going.
Mm-hmm.
And then here we are destroying all of our statues and history that represents our past. And, you know, having in the United States, having somebody who might have been a Confederate soldier or who was representing the South doesn't necessarily mean that you're condoning that person's actions. I think by leaving that statue up, it reminds us of the mistakes that we've made as human beings so that we can remember. But you take away these physical things that remind us of who we were and who we're trying to get away from, we're just going to keep running in that same cycle of problems and we're never going to learn.
More. Then the only person to tell us we've made a mistake is our wives.
Right.
Well, how many times has this been done in history where they've rewiped it and rewritten it? You know,
Exactly. Mumbai, Bombay, Saigon. You know, they change the name and think it all goes away.
Yeah, all of it. Where they say he who wins the wars rewrites the history, right?
Exactly. Exactly right. Otherwise, I'd be speaking German to you if we would lost the Second World War.
I'm just finding all this stuff in combination to be fascinating. I mean, just the Q and the Sarah stuff is
brilliant, isn't it?
Fascinating in and of itself. But then when you add someone like Greg Hallett to the equation, it just makes it that much more immense. And I know that we're all kind of into the Q movement, but there really is no technical connection between the Q movement and Greg Hallett. It just seems that it's kind of parallel in a lot of ways. It's
to do with frequency. And
now we're getting into the spiritual side of this.
Exactly. Well, this is what happens. You know, sometimes when you connect with people and a shiver goes down your spine, it's almost like you've met them before. And this is where we're at. Where I'm connecting with people like yourselves that I just instantly have a connection with because we have the same focus. Our mind is clear of all the clutter that comes out of mainstream. And the minute you start looking back into the mainstream, you just go, you feel shit, I'll be honest with you. Because they're talking so much shite. And when you get your mind clear of all that, you can relax and enjoy. And when you start investigating with a clear mind, I've often said in my videos that I like to see it from different angles. And if you look at New York and you look at the Empire State Building and you look at it in the sun from one side and the shade from the other, it looks completely different. And you look at the Statue of Liberty from different sides. It looks different. And you look at the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco from different angles, it looks completely different. In the sun, it looks different. In the shade, it looks different. But the same reality. And it's always good to see things through other people's eyes. We often say, you know, I'd like to spend 5 minutes in that man's shoes. And that's what we're having the opportunity to do right now, to share our views. Because I'm not the Messiah. I'm just Charlie, joining up the dots. Talking to somebody like you, because we've got a picture. And you've got bits and we've all got bits. And we put them together so that we can enjoy the picture.
It's a beautiful thing, man. I think, you know, having these type of conversations and being able to connect, I think is just a valuable experience. And then being able to record it and share it with other people who are, you know, following these stories, you know, I think it adds a lot of value to people's lives. It also gives an example of how people can communicate, whether, because I know that all of us here don't agree 100% on everything the same way.
Good.
But and that's the whole thing that makes the world go round. But, you know, when you can find those commonalities and those common bonds, I've mentioned it before, it's, you know, too many people look at the differences as a negative. What are the negative differences between us, as opposed to what are the commonalities between us? And then something you've been saying a lot that has been really resonating a lot with me is how you've been talking about tuning out the mainstream media. And I've heard this being said by multiple people, that if you just turn off the TV, you're almost like, you can watch TV for like a week and just take that in, and then turn TV off, and then you'll be like, what were they talking about? Like, none of this makes any sense, because once the TV is off and you're not hearing all that mainstream news, you're not seeing what the news is reporting, which is absolutely
they're creating
insane.
The world. They're telling the vision. That's exactly what it is. They're creating that mindset, so your consciousness creates that reality. And then all the people that are right now in fear, that's why they are the way they are. And for those of us like Charlie and yourself are saying, when you tune all that out, now we can watch it, but we can see right through it, so it doesn't affect you, because you have more wisdom and more knowledge beyond what this one focus is on, this false information which they keep pushing. You can see through it because you're exploring outside of it, and you see all these other facts and points. You can put all these facts together and say, okay, the truth will reveal itself through the information, because information is just information. So when it all dissolves, the truth reveals itself. There's only one truth. It doesn't mean I have it or you have it or Charlie has it, because whatever it is, there's only one truth.
Yeah.
Right. There's just different perspectives, as Charlie was mentioning. There's different perspectives of the truth.
Exactly.
And
but
bringing our perspectives together help to give that other perspective that we're not seeing ourselves by listening to someone else share their experiences. And it's such a valuable
That's where the
thing.
openness comes in, openness to look at others. Now, where I'm in an environment where I'm with a lot of elderly people. I'm in an RV park. And so not one of them have gotten sick. Not one of them have passed away. And we get them in here all the time, and I live with a bunch of them. But a lot of them, rightfully so, and I have compassion for all of them, they're in fear of this. But the majority of them, they're in their RV and they're watching the television. So rightfully so, they are in fear. And I don't push what I know on them unless they ask. But when I have conversations with them, I see them where they're at.
Stan, you have a duty of care to tell them that fear is more likely to kill them than COVID-19, because they will be scared to death.
And it's hard to do that in a 1 to 2 minute, but it requires care to have the conversation. So if they care to have the conversation, then I'm open to have the conversation.
We learned something the other day, which is very important. I used to say to people, "Are you awake?" And of course, it offends them. We've changed the word from awake to aware, and they're more receptive now to the word, "Are you aware?" And it's terminology. If we get the terminology right, then we can bring them along with us. But people back off if the terminology is wrong.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense, because psychologically it just puts it on a different level.
Yeah,
puts people on defensive. Yeah. And everybody receives the information differently. So that's where it's like, okay, you kind of get to know them a little bit, then you can see how to approach them better. Because you don't really know somebody in the first 2 minutes.
No,
you know?
No.
Not at all. I mean, and you know, most people are, when you talk about perception earlier, just the fact that the basis of psychology is perception is reality. And people act a certain way around certain people based off the way that they think that the other person thinks about them.
Yeah.
It's really crazy when you get into like all the details about how psychology works. And with all that being said, like the media, they've been able to, commercials, programming, been able to figure out the psychology behind how to manipulate people's thought patterns, mind. And sadly, there's more people who are living in fear today than there are like us who are trying to bring more awareness to people.
No, I totally agree. And what Donald Trump is doing, he's having to let people suffer. He's having to do it to get them to believe how evil they really are. Because if he told them so, and he did all the arrests quickly, they would not believe him. He's got to take the people with him and show them how evil these people are.
If they just made a bunch of arrests all at once, it would just look like a takeover. And
correct.
Yep. Dictatorship. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I've already kind of questioned that anyways, because it's like, as a friend of mine that I discussed the QAnon movement with, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Mm-hmm. Until the enemy is no longer there, then that friend is now an enemy again. You know, because I'm not really a big fan of governance, because it just seems like, I'm not saying that we don't need government, but it just seems like absolute power corrupts absolutely, and we're not really seeing like anybody really truly be a just leader.
Well, I've seen some very interesting things that Trump is doing right now. From my intel, Q existed. JFK set up Q in 1962 to leak out information because he feared for his life. That's why it was set up. Now in America, you have letters. In England, we have numbers. We have 007. You have MQ, but Q was the unknown bar, which works to put the information out. Donald Trump has now set up, and this is the first time I've discussed it in public. He's now set up what he set up 7 utilities. These 7 utilities will provide the information directly from inside the White House rather than Twitter. And it will be 7 people that are trusted, not mainstream. There'll be people, I know one of them already because he's shared that information with me, but he's going to have 7 sources of information that come out away from mainstream media. So if you want to know what's going on, that you'll know where to go, because these people will have the information.
There's a news network that's been reporting at the White House. I'm just trying to think of the name of it. I don't know if it's like AON or something like that, but they're more along the lines of not the mainstream media.
Yeah, no, he's set up.
Sorry. What's that?
I think it was OAN, yeah.
It's something to that effect, yeah.
Yeah, somebody that I'm talking to has been asked to be one of his utilities.
Very interesting.
That's fascinating. He's looking for young men who stand up for the truth. And this guy that I'm talking to has got a lot of followers, and he's always focused on the truth, and he's absolutely focused on finding out, making sure he's got all the knowledge. I mean, the guy is incredibly well read. Fascinating. And it's the way forward. Instead of having these press calls that happen at the moment, the interpretation that's coming out of what he's saying and what goes into the media, I've watched the briefings that he does. Then I see what the media writes, just to cross-reference. It doesn't even bear any resemblance to what he said. And you go, are you for real? And I've even watched on British television in the past where what they're saying about what's happening is not happening at all.
Right.
The other thing that I've mentioned a few times is when I'm over in Dubai working, my wife and I went into Nespresso to buy some capsules. And we were served by a young lad from Syria. And my wife went, "Wow, so you must feel a lot safer here in Dubai." I went, "No, I went home at the weekend to see my mum and dad to Aleppo." She said, what, you went back to Aleppo? He said, "Yeah, I took my mum and dad out for dinner and went out nightclubbing with my mates." And my wife said, "Are you for real?" He said, "Yeah, there's a bit of trouble in parts of Aleppo, but we live in the nice part." And it was like, and he said, "There's film crews in the rough part setting up scenes for television." And my wife went absolutely mad. But this is happening all over the world. The BBC, CNN, all these corrupt news networks are creating these stories. And then you saw the other day in America where the news channels and the police were putting these bricks out for the rioters. And you just go, these sort of things need to be seen to be believed.
Yeah, well, thank God we have technology, and we have these smartphones that have cameras and people can record. I mean, it's a double-edged technology too, because people are putting out videos that they're not showing the full story either. They're not showing the before and after, and you're just seeing one thing. And if that's all you see, you're going to definitely misjudge what you're viewing. So, I mean, but the mainstream media, from what I understand, it's 90% of the media companies that goes for radio, TV, cable companies, all that is owned by 6 companies, which really kind of come down to like really one core person in a way, and it kind of relates back to Soros.
Yeah, totally.
It's crazy to think how corrupt and dirty everything is.
Yep.
So what are your thoughts about all this, Stan?
Well, you mean from the Q to the King to all the events? I think it's just that it is the Great Awakening, and that goes deeper than just, the awakening of all the corruption. It literally is a spiritual movement. It's the battle in the heavens. So this is the biggest event in the history of our time, and we're here for it. Like on a spiritual level, we are here for this time. So if you take it beyond these bodies and all that, all this materialness, the energy we're moving to in the universe is just consciousness. It's just this big play of the universe coming into this position in time where it's just a shift. And it's just a big shift in time. And we are beings manifested here for this moment to be here to bear witness, and it's that simple. But we go through and we witness all this chaos. That's why if you unplug from the TV, you're able to sit back and not be in fear and just witness everything unfold. And then the glory and the greatness is on the other side of all this.
Yeah.
So if people can just take that message and say, hey, you know what? I'm witnessing all the BS. I see the riots. I see the hate. I see the fear, and know that that's just going to come to an end. This is the time we're in. This is literally the time we're in. We can see it. And Charlie can feel it. You can feel it. Many of us that are awake and unplugged, we know this. It's not a belief. It's not something that we're just making up. It's not some la-la fairy tale. It's really happening. Evil is being eradicated from the planet and the earth right now.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about the spirituality aspect too, because, I've been doing a lot of research on human history and religion and things like that. And it seems like we've been lied to on many different levels, all the way around. And, I'm ultimately searching for truth of our history and spirituality and why we were here, why we were created. I feel like that information has been made available to us. It's just somebody has that information hidden and thinks that their opinion of keeping the information away from others is more valid than them sharing it with us, which is very sad.
It is. I think one of the most powerful things I heard Trump say, he said a lot of powerful things, is that he's going to give us back our God-given right of freedom that was taken from us.
And that would be our natural rights. Just natural law. It's things that we were born with.
Common law, instead of being a commodity, being a human being.
Yeah, common law, natural law.
Being one of God's children that we actually are.
Now, is common law, because here in the United States, this is something I've been trying to learn a little bit more too. There are 3 states in the U.S. that continue to use what we thought was British common law. And that would be Virginia, Pennsylvania, and another state, which might be Massachusetts. I thought that the British law was common law. Has it just been
No, it's
distorted?
not.
Okay.
The British law is not common law at all. And that's why we have high courts and all of that sort of stuff. Because we're all a commodity. We're all traded from the day we're born. They capitalize every single human being. To the value of about 250,000 either US dollars, pounds, or euros, depending on where you are. And that's what Trump will end. He will end that. And once that's ended, the Federal Reserve, if you go through the list on Nasara for you guys and Jassara for us guys, that's one of the most powerful parts of it, to return us to common law, or, you know, I think the wording for the American law is to return us to constitutional law. I forget what they call it now.
It might be constitutional law, but I think that it would still kind of all fall under the same category. I think it would be very similar, if not the same.
He was selected to do this job by the alliance, and he's known for some time he's going to get the job, and they knew that he was going to win 100%. There was no question about that.
Would you say this was from just during the Kennedy presidency?
It's what the plan.
The whole movement, the alliance, basically, the formation of the alliance.
The alliance was formed in 1963, and every time it showed its head, somebody got killed. So it buried itself for a long time, but it built a very, very strong foundation of honourable American people who befriended good people in Russia, China, and India. And the alliance now consists of around 8,000 people. You have some brilliant minds in there. I mean, brilliant minds.
You would have to. That's what I try to explain to people, is that you have to really understand this game as like the Russian doll. You know, you've got the doll within doll, and it's a game within a game within a game. It's very complex. I can only imagine what it's like to be inside there. The intelligence you would have to have in this spy game, because you literally have to befriend your enemies.
Yeah. And remember that Trump never used the CIA or the FBI for his own protection.
No, which was very interesting.
Yeah, he's got his own boys. And most people in America are completely oblivious to the fact that not only the Americans are looking after Trump in a military style, the Chinese and the Russians and the Indians are on board in America looking after him. This is your Russian doll levels. I mean, they're surrounding him like you'd never ever know. They're making sure nobody gets to him.
Oh, I believe it, because, I mean, I would kind of, like, in my lifetime, I would say that based off the general consensus of the media and the majority of people, that they don't like Trump. So I'm sure that there's been many assassination attempts on his life. I mean, we've seen assassination attempts on good presidents for whatever reason, but you know, you don't ever hear about it. But I definitely know, like, coming out trying to drain the swamp, that he's put a target on his back completely.
He's very well. George Soros put up a huge bounty for him to be killed. You would expect that. But no, he's very well protected, and he's a very happy chappy, because you can just look at his face. He looks younger than when he took over. He's in a very...
Yeah, he doesn't look like he's aged like some of those guys, because some of those guys look kind of rough after a couple of years.
Yeah. And that wasn't just adrenochrome.
No, that's a whole nother story, man. There's so many different rabbit holes that we could go down.
We won't go down that one now.
I guess... So with our time differences, I know it's kind of getting a little bit late on your end. Was there anything that you wanted to touch on before we wrap up, or anything that you wanted to... I think
the most important thing that rights, that Stan and we all have, is we have a responsibility to tell the truth and to take people's fear away. I put out a video the other day saying, just send me your questions. I had over 1,000. And I only gave 8 replies, but most of the questions were the same. We have a duty of care to tell the people the truth. And then when people come back and say, show me the proof, I try and keep all the proof that I can send to them. So I've backed everything up on truth. It's not a fantasy. It is the truth. There's people out there go, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. Well, that's very easy to say. I don't care what people call me. I'm just a truth seeker. That's it. Right. Do what you like. That's your perception. We're trying to
critical thinker.
Sorry?
You're a critical thinker, and anybody who thinks critically gets labeled as such.
Of course they do. Yeah. Of course they do. But I think it's our duty. We're getting the message out there, to get it out there clean and clear, and also to be open to scrutiny from these people, which the current media are not, because they just blank you. They completely blank you. Interestingly enough, there was a reporter from the BBC, an ex-reporter, who tried to contact. I tried to contact her when I had 1,000 subscribers, and she told me she was too busy because she had 10,000 subscribers. She's now got 20,000 subscribers, and I've got 50,000 subscribers. And so she contacted Mahoney, and Mahoney said, "Sorry, I'm busy."
That's great. That's how people are. I mean, some of these content creators, you'll find that you really got to like kind of try to figure out who people are, because there's a lot of people in this content creating game to make money. And, you know, that's why, like me, myself, like I've been kind of suffering with the growth of my channel, because I'm talking about things that YouTube doesn't want to see out there.
Sure, exactly.
And you know, I mean, I love your channel, Charlie. Since all this kind of stuff has happened, I've been checking out your stuff. I think you kind of started kind of putting out stuff in March, and
Day one.
Great quality content, man. The stuff you've been doing with Jack Kidd, the other conversations you've been having. I appreciate you, Jack, David Mahoney, all doing what you did with getting with Greg and getting these documentaries going and getting this first part out, man. I can't thank all you guys enough for that.
We
appreciate you including us too in the equation.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks to all of you for sure.
No, it'd be an absolute pleasure to share this out with everybody and keep people awake to what's really going on. I'll just finish on one funny thing. I had a communication the other day with Mahoney and Lee Dawson, just like this, a three-way conversation. We had a lovely 1 hour chat. Got to the end of it and forgot to record it.
I've done that. I've done that before.
So
we had to do it all over again. But
and sometimes
Charlie, I got a quick question. Question. How long have you been following Q? Have you been following the Q from the beginning?
I followed Q right from the start. I knew about Q from 4 years ago when it popped its head up again. I knew about it, and then I started to research. And because of the nature of what I do, you know, it's a bit, I joke about it now, but in the old days when I moved money about, I'd be on a private jet with hookers, cocaine, and champagne. Now I've got ambassadors and security guards. It's not the same anymore.
No. I used to be a strip club DJ, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Those days are long gone.
No, we grow, we evolve, and you know, we change. We become wiser in our age.
Exactly.
Beautiful.
Part of the process, for sure.
It is, but no, it's been an incredible journey. At Q, when I did my research into it, because I know all these guys, you find out they're a mind of information, ex-military, ex-government. When they're out of military and out of government, I could sit and talk to them for hours because they've got stories.
Oh yeah.
That what they can do is educate us all. And the other thing I've tried to make a point of, you wouldn't have probably had it in America like we had it in England. I don't know, but before Google came out, we had a set of books called Encyclopedia Britannica.
Yep.
So, and your parents never had them, it was your grandparents. So you'd have to go round to your grandparents' house. You'd have to ask granddad and grandma, and if you couldn't find it, they would tell you. And that's where you get the truth from. Not from mainstream media. You get it from grandpa and grandma. So
right.
You learn to talk to them and find out what the truth is.
And it's crazy how technology is starting to make that distance from that now. You know, people aren't communicating directly. So, I mean, it would be nice to see us utilizing technology, but not taking away from our humanity.
Exactly. Well, it brings us back to our humanity, doesn't it? To talk to our grandparents a bit more.
Right.
Our uncles and aunties and ex-military. Old people are a mind of information. Use them.
Cool. But I want to let everybody know, I want to do more conversations like this. For people who aren't familiar with me and Stan, we've been covering stuff on Q and Greg Howlett. So check out both of our channels. Make sure you subscribe to all three of our channels. we're going to have links down below for each other's channels. Make sure you support us because we're definitely all trying to establish and bring about truth. And these conversations, whether it's on Charlie's channel with different people or Stan's channel or mine, it will be continued. So thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.